Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How's everybody doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right. It's Monday.
Yeah.
We know what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
Do you live in
Monday's
Santa
actually
Barbara?
good for us because all three of our kids are in daycare, so that's good.
Yeah.
Awesome. I close my door, and when I do that, I worry that my kids are going to burst in any minute, even when I tell them not to. That just encourages them even more.
Oh, that's okay. I'm familiar with that. That's totally fine.
So do you live in Santa Barbara?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pretty nice down here. Although cloudy today, but that's sometimes nice.
Great. Well, I'm Scott Geitler from ChemTalk, and this is Lawton and Rylie.
No.
And Lawton and I actually right down the street in Thousand Oaks.
Yeah,
Yep.
not too far.
Not too
Yeah.
far. And Riley's in Texas. Remind Rylie, which city are you in?
Normally College Station, right now I'm in San Antonio.
Excellent.
Cool.
Excellent. So so then let's get started. Michelle, you're a professor in the chemical engineering department at UC Santa Barbara, correct?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
I see that you have quite a amazing pathway to get there. You did your undergrad at Carnegie Mellon, right? And then you got a PhD at the University of Delaware and postdoc at MIT.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I have a group of about 10 friends that I'm really close with that all did their graduate degree at Carnegie Mellon in the 90s, a little bit before you. But I still keep in touch with them all the time. You know, we talk every week. I don't know if you still keep in touch with people you went to Carnegie Mellon with, but
Well, one of them's my husband, actually. Yeah.
really,
Yeah, you're not left much of a choice
Yeah.
there, right?
was he a chemical engineering major also?
Yeah, and in fact, we're both in the same department now, so we've
wow.
done this whole hop together from college to grad school to postdoc to UCSB. So, yep.
That's
So I
great.
took
That's
one of my
really
classes.
exciting. That's really exciting. I did that did not come up in our research on you, so.
Well, we have two different last names, so it would be hard.
Got it.
You'd have to have independently researched him as well, which you probably did not do for this.
You're right.
We did not. Now we have something to do for next time.
Yeah, for next time.
So, Michelle, you have at least 26 honors, probably many more. Presidential Early Career Award, MIT Top 35 Innovators Under 35 in the world. That's amazing. Congratulations. I mean, which of these honors are you most proud of or most humbled by? You know, it was such a huge list.
I mean, I would say it's just really nice to be recognized. It happens far too often in academia because academics mostly just deal with defeat all the time.
Right.
So it's kind of nice to be recognized. I mean, I don't know if any one of them I would necessarily single out, except, well, I guess the PCASE award, the presidential award, to have gone to the White House and actually met Barack Obama and all of these other amazing scientists, that was pretty awesome. And I was nominated by the Department of Energy, so that was nice that they felt that they wanted to recognize me, and just the community of people that I met while in DC to receive that award was just exceptional. It was awesome. People from all different universities, all different research areas, all trying to improve America's position in innovation and science and technology. I think that was the coolest thing, right? But yeah, I'm just lucky to be recognized sometimes. It doesn't happen a lot, so it's good to celebrate when it happens.
Sure. Was that back in 2016 you went to Washington?
It was, yeah. So it was right before, it was right before that election, the May before everybody's lives were a little changed.
Wow.
But yeah, it was great.
Is there anyone in particular you met other than Barack Obama that like you knew or looked up to that you had never met in person before? Or sometimes these events will bring together interesting group of people.
I mean, I very unexpectedly met Jeff Bezos. He was in the White House at the same time, so all the awardees got to meet Jeff Bezos, and that was very unexpected.
Did he ask you to sign up for
a little bit?
Did he ask you to sign up for Amazon Prime?
I was tempted to ask him for lifelong Amazon Prime, but I did not. But yeah, that was an unexpected person. I certainly didn't know everyone, but since the vast majority of the people that I met there were younger, a lot of us knew each other already. You know, we come from different institutions, but a lot of people trained together. And I, you know, certainly remember seeing Will Tisdale there, and we actually had overlapped a little bit at the University of Delaware, and he's a professor at MIT now. And we were both being recognized from the Department of Energy, so that was cool. But yeah, and it was just, yeah, it was a cool experience and all around.
That's great. That's great. Well, congratulations. Now, now that you're at UC Santa Barbara, let us know if we're explaining this correctly. If we told people that you were specializing in synthetic biology, which is a subset of bioengineering, would you say that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I think people like to put synthetic biology under a lot of different headings, but I think that's fair, putting it under bioengineering for sure.
Okay. And but you're 100% in the chemical engineering department, and do you still run into people that think that chemical engineering is a term owned by Shell and Chevron? Or
yeah, all the time. I think people are increasingly becoming more accepting of the fact that classic chemical engineering as we know it is changing, right? But you know, I think putting thermodynamics and kinetics and transport, all of the classic chemical engineering know-how, and applying those towards biological systems is it's just a natural pivot point, right? It's a natural place to go. So to me, I don't really see a huge barrier between the biology and biological systems and chemical engineering, although you know, a lot of chemical engineers tend to be a little scared of learning the biology, but once they get over the jargon, it's, you know, it's basically the same. You know, cell is just a little reactor. So yeah, I think the field is becoming increasingly broader, and not just for bioengineering, but really across a lot of different application spaces.
Right. Yeah, two of us are engineers, myself and Lawton and Rylie. I believe you're going to biology or neuroscience, or refresh my memory. Biochemistry, right? So yeah, if we put all of our minds, we could probably do some good synthetic biology. Lawton, you're looking into synthetic biology, right?
Yeah. So right now I'm pursuing a chemical engineering degree at UC Irvine. I'm currently taking mass transfer, which is quite a class, but I'm getting through it. But yeah, in grad school, I do plan on going into like a synthetic biology route, because it's just crazy and fascinating. I mean,
yeah. I know Nancy De Silva at UC Irvine.
Yes,
you probably know her well too. But yeah, does great work in that area for sure.
Yep. She's very sweet.
Yep. Cool.
So I think the next thing we want to talk about is something, Michelle, you were involved in a few years ago, which was looking at bacteria and fungi and how you can utilize their metabolic pathways to create sugars and biofuels. And correct me if I'm wrong, but did you guys have to get some of these organisms out of the poop of large herbivores?
Oh yes, lots of fun. So we
who had to crawl under the cow?
Yeah, we thankfully you don't need that much to work with. Most of what we do has been in partnership with the Santa Barbara Zoo, which, you know, being in Thousand Oaks, maybe you've visited before.
Yep.
There's a lot of different herbivores that are there, and you know, in the guts of those herbivores are microbes that make powerful enzymes that break down plant material. So we went straight to the source and isolated some microorganisms that come from those zoo animals. And the zoo has always been happy to partner with us, and they say that their animals are eager to donate to science, and they are donating every day, so that's just fine. And so so yeah, we don't isolate all the time. We only do it maybe once or twice a year. But then we can take those fecal samples back to the lab and enrich the microorganisms that are there and study their function. And we focus mostly on fungi, but increasingly more on bacteria and methanogens and the gut microbes that are doing those chemical transformations.
Got it. That's great. And will you take the pathways all the way to production of various sugars, or will you go all the way to create a biofuel, or how far do you take it along?
Yeah, so we're really at the basic science end of things. So a lot of what we do is to focus on the deconstruction part, and we're increasingly starting to look at the conversion part. So a lot of our early work was, you know, what are the microbes, what are the enzymes,
Right.
how do the metabolic pathways work to kind of break down that woody biomass waste material into all these bite-sized bits of sugars that can be, you know, kind of starting points for other microbes. And now we're starting to look at actually making chemicals, right? So things that might be derived from lignin, or that you could upgrade from sugars to fuels, or that you could upgrade into volatile fatty acids, and through some even combinations with just chemical catalysis can make into drop-in aviation fuels and things like that. We've done comparatively less on that, just because it took us a long time to do the first part, the deconstruction part. But now that we have a pretty good understanding, we're moving it more into the application space.
Right. You know, like which I mean, I don't know if you're this far along yet, but which specific types of biofuels are you looking into, like biodiesels or gasoline replacements, or?
So a little bit, it kind of depends. We initially looked at like biogas, which is real low value, but that was the easiest target. And then increasingly looking at volatile fatty acids that can be upgraded. And you can use arrested methanogenesis and microbial community to make essentially aviation type fuels. So those would be like longer chain, you know, yeah, longer chain chemicals.
Right.
We don't really do much with ethanol, but and increasingly we're starting to look more at materials even. So like bio-derived monomers that could be polymerized into novel materials.
Oh, okay.
We're looking a lot at like the action of polyketide synthases and natural products. There's a center at UCSB that we're involved with that is starting to source biological monomers for using synthetic biology and combining all of our material science expertise on the UCSB campus to try and to create some novel bio-derived polymers. So we're involved in that center too.
Oh, wow, that's very useful then.
I hope so.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Well, you know, if you just want to stop at the sugars, it's probably okay. As you might have been aware, the famous organic chemist Woodward, his birthday would have been 2 days ago, and he was you know, famous for synthesizing quinine, but he stopped at quinotoxin, and he's just like, that's good enough. I don't need to go the rest. Other people have done it. So we were just laughing when we were looking at what you were doing, and we're like, yeah, it's probably fancy for people. As long as other people have taken it the rest of the way, you can be like, oh, we're going to stop here.
Yeah, I mean, this is where it's nice to collaborate with people because you can't do all of this, right?
Right.
It's good to have collaborators, especially on the industrial side, that can take things to more like point of use and you know, places like that, so that we can specialize in a couple areas.
Yeah. But I think it's just really helpful. A lot of people and students, when they look at like a department like yours, they're like, you know, how is this ever going to affect my life or life in America? And I think clearly we see that this can lead to, you know, production of fuels that are better for the environment. They're more sustainable, possibly more cost effective. So it's, you know, I think that's all a great thing to be, for us to be working on, and for our grant money to be going to. So
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, investment in basic science research can take, you know, 10, 20, even longer, the years to, you know, actually impact people's lives. I think we've seen that, you know, front and center with the COVID-19 vaccines, and,
Right.
you know, the tons of people who have been focused on mRNA delivery and delivery systems. And people were like, there's no application for that. And then suddenly, oh, here's an application. Right. So yeah, I think that theme rings true in a lot of different application spaces.
right. Now, Riley was looking into some current research being done on fluorine or fluorides, and Riley, you found some papers that Michelle published on that topic, right?
Yes, I did.
And
Yeah, and I thought they were,
go ahead.
what?
Go ahead.
Oh, I thought they were really interesting and like ingenious. Yet it's a very simple method to like think of like using fluorine or fluoride instead of antibiotics. I thought that was really smart. But I was wondering, so how do fluoride exporters work at like a molecular level to
Yeah.
prove that?
Yeah. So I can tell you what I know, which may not be everything, but and I will completely credit the first author of that paper, Justin Yu, who's my former graduate student. He got his PhD, and so now he's working in industry. This was really his idea.
Okay.
He was so I'll take a step back and say that we had identified some fluoride exporters from anaerobic fungi, which we had discovered from these zoo animals, right? And fluoride exporters in nature, they work pretty much by just pumping fluoride out of the cell. There's too much fluoride that accumulates, it'll kill the cell. And so so pretty much all organisms that live in the real world, they have some sort of fluoride export system. And in bacteria, it looks a little bit different than it does in eukaryotic cells like ours, but the proteins are remarkably similar. In bacteria, they just like are in two parts, but in eukaryotes, they're in one. So so there's been a pretty good body of work on how those exporters worked. And we initially got really interested in just trying to take some of these exporters from anaerobic fungi and put them in yeast and just see if they work the way that we thought. And so we had published a paper on that, and we were delighted to see that we could use yeast to actually screen the function of these weird anaerobic fungal exporters, and just as a proof of concept that, yeah, they were doing the things that we thought that they were. And then Justin got this very creative idea of, you know, hey, this is actually a really good selection system. And if you could just deliver the genes for fluoride exporters to genetically modified organisms, it's a way to select for them without having to use antibiotics. Because pretty much all sources of lab water, you know, don't have fluoride, and you know, if and two, they'd be a really good kind of biocontainment strategy. This would be a great biocontainment strategy because pretty much all sources of water out in the earth have some amount of fluoride, so it just immediately kill any genetically modified organism that has that selection scheme in place. So that's it was just such a great idea. And then he designed these experiments and followed through with all of it. And we were happy to see that it had this nice impact, and hopefully it can replace to some extent the rampant use of antibiotics in biotech research,
Right.
because as you know, that creates a lot of other issues.
Right.
Um, we're not dealing with a pandemic right now that is caused by antibiotic resistant bacteria, but we could be someday. And
Right.
so having ways to get around that is important.
And it's way more cost efficient too, right?
Yeah. Because from a biotech perspective, in making a product, if you have to use antibiotic-based selection markers, it's just expensive. Those chemicals are expensive. They often have a shelf life that's limited, and fluoride's real cheap.
Right.
Yeah.
And you pointed out it's relatively benign too, right?
Yeah. It's not really good. It's not a heavy metal compound. It's not something that's going to cause problems in the environment because there's so much fluoride around anyways. I mean, we all have fluoride in our toothpaste,
Right.
right?
Sure.
So yeah, it's a pretty good benign selection strategy.
Yeah, no, that's.
Have any labs or oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Rylie.
Have any labs or biotech researchers started using the method or?
It's fairly new, so I'm not aware of anybody who's come to us, at least, that's made us aware of that fact. But since it's out in the published space, I'm hoping that people are starting to take advantage. I have gotten some requests for plasmids and things, so that is always a good sign that people are going to use the system. But I think it's far too early for anybody to have developed like a bioprocess based on it.
Right.
But yeah, I'm hopeful that people are taking note and that it'll start to be used.
That's really exciting. Just a side note, I totally get what you're saying about sodium fluoride being benign, but I couldn't help but smile because I have a pretty extensive lab with most transition metals and anions in my lab. I pretty much have everything except like mercury 2 and cyanide. I don't want to have that around, but when I ranked my inventory by LD50, sodium fluoride had the smallest oral rat LD50 of everything.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like, as long as you don't put a spoonful in your mouth, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Or dump.
Yeah, it's true. It is relative. It's like at very low levels, right? So I guess I'm saying it's benign at the extraordinarily low levels that it typically exists in nature.
And I knew what you meant, but I couldn't help. And then I also thought of that. Yeah, you don't want to dump hot concentrated hydrosulfuric sulfuric acid.
Yeah, that's bad news.
Which actually one of the largest causes of industrial deaths, it's a hobby of mine to investigate chemical accidents, and is when companies accidentally dump acid on their sodium sulfide, because sodium sulfide is used in huge quantities in industry. And it creates these clouds of sodium hydrogen sulfide, and it kills 5 or 10 workers at a time. And it just sort of, anytime I read that, I'm like, I just got to remember to keep my fluorides and sulfides away from my acids.
Oh yeah, it's an excellent reminder.
Excellent reminder. That's great. So if somebody really looked up to you and your work in synthetic biology and wanted to do this for a career, what would you tell them in terms of a path of like, what would they want to pursue as an undergrad degree? And then what would they want to do in terms of grad school? How would they like best prepare themselves for this career path?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say in the spirit of synthetic biology, part of the reason why it's so cool and it's developing so fast is because it draws from so many different disciplines. So there's people that come into synthetic biology from engineering, from biology, from chemistry, from physics, and even from, kind of non-traditional STEM majors, right? There's people who are involved in communications that are involved in synthetic biology, right? And that's all really important because you want to have, there's so many different facets of synthetic biology that you want to not just build the technology, but you want to build it responsibly and ethically, and then make sure that any deployment of synthetic biology expertise is happening with public buy-in and with public awareness. And so I think that to answer your question in the most verbose way possible, I think it's important to have so many different players and stakeholders involved, right? But I would say if you want to be involved in kind of the technical part of it, you know, having an engineering degree or a biology, biochemistry, chemistry degree is a great start. And, you know, that's not to say that you couldn't get there in other ways, but having a graduate degree to do research is always wonderful, because then you kind of learn in your PhD how to do research, how to create, how to define a research problem, how to draw from the literature to learn about research approaches, and to develop that technical chops and expertise in order to work on a deep problem, right? So so I think having a graduate degree is terrific if you want to be really involved in addressing research problems and doing the research.
Right.
And, you know, and that could really be cross-disciplinary too. I've seen a lot of people who have majored in more kind of basic science fields go into engineering or bioengineering or chemical engineering for PhDs. I've seen people go the other way, and that's all possible. I think it's more about getting that getting the training with and working on a research problem that truly motivates you, and being open and willing to collaborate with others. So yeah, I mean, you could definitely go the straight chemical engineering route, and that's one way, but it's not the only way.
Sure.
And certainly bioengineering is very embracing of synthetic biology as well, and there's starting to be more bioengineering, biomedical engineering degree departments too.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if any universities are offering a cross-discipline program in this area. I know UC Santa Barbara has some cross-disciplinary programs. I know you're on the panel for some of them, like earth science and other things. So
Yeah, we're involved in, you know, a lot. Yeah.
Just seems like a growing field, you know. It seems like something that more people may want to go into, and they might be asking questions. Okay, well, what are my options? What kind of careers are going to be available? So yeah, that's something we're going to try at ChemTalk to help people with these kinds of decisions, because we find that a lot of people interested in chemistry really don't know, you know, what to do after they major in chemistry and what they can do.
Right.
Obviously, you know, they have a lot of different options, and they can still do synthetic biology, but a lot of them, like, they just need like a focus, like, okay, if you want to do this, do this. So we're gonna try to help them with that. But in terms of your job as a professor and a researcher, what do you love most about your job?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the pandemic has been real interesting in trying to, you know, navigate things, but it's made me realize the best part about my job is working with my group, with the young trainees that are in my group, everywhere from undergrads to PhD students to postdocs, and helping them reach their goals. And at the same time, we're doing some top-notch science and learning a lot of surprises, especially from nature. And you know, and forging collaborations and just being really inventive and open to new science and new tools for engineering is the best part, right? So so that's my number one thing that you know, I miss seeing all these people in person. But I really enjoy everybody in my group and the mentorship aspects of things. Because certainly, you know, no PI that's running a lab is doing everything. I like to say I'm probably technically the most useless person in my lab. But it's my job is to help, you know, kind of keep everybody on the same page and advance research projects and advanced career training opportunities for all the researchers. So that's my favorite part, is the mentorship.
So what's a typical day at work? I mean, say it's not COVID and everyone's in person. Yeah, what's a typical day like on the job?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess there's lots of places to start. I mean, usually I haven't slept much because of my 3 children, and then I wake up and take them to daycare. But that notwithstanding, but yeah, we, you know, normally come in and answer the onslaught of emails that usually appear from overnight. And, you know, I have meetings throughout the day with people that are in my group, and sometimes some seminars I'll go to, or, you know, increasingly like collaborative meetings that might take place across the country, across the world. And trying to get outside a little bit to clear my head and recharge, whether that's a walk or run, in the day, to try and just reset a little bit.
Yeah.
And I find I get a lot of ideas if I just detach a bit from my computer. And, one of the things I love to do in person is to walk down the hallway of my department. So actually all of us at UCSB's chemical engineering department, we more or less all sit in the same hallway. And my office is typically in the corner where the printer and the water cooler is. So I see a lot of people. I, used to be able to recognize all my colleagues' footsteps. And visit and enjoy time with my colleagues, and that's usually where we think of a lot of collaborative ideas too.
Right.
And then we'll usually have more meetings and whatnot. And I'm trying to academia is great because you can do pretty much everything on your own schedule. Although, one of my colleagues jokes that academia is great because you can choose whatever 80 hours a week you want to work. Which, there's a shred of truth in that. I think a lot of us are type A individuals, and we're constantly thinking about our labs, and it's a good thing, but sometimes it can get overwhelming. So these days I'm trying to unplug a bit and be with my family at night, and to try and respect that time for our family time. There might be a couple emails answered at night, but I'm trying to pull away from that a little bit more. I also have the luxury of being able to do that now that I'm a full professor and have advanced in my career. It's becoming a lot harder for younger people to do things like that. But I'm trying to have a more balanced life. We'll say that.
That's great. Do they still ask you to teach any classes?
Yeah, I teach once per quarter. So we're in the quarter system at UCSB, like Irvine is most of the UC system. And so I teach one course per quarter. And usually that's something that's in my my specialty. So biotech class. Right now I'm teaching an omics enabled biotech class. I typically also teach we have a required bioprocessing class of the chemical engineering undergraduate. So I typically teach that too.
So what the class you're teaching now, what year are the students? Are they undergrads or graduates or both?
They're undergraduates. It's an elective course, so they could be anywhere from sophomore to senior.
Okay.
And I think most of the people in my class right now are juniors, but yeah, so the electives draw from a lot.
Okay. And then the students who take your classes, what kind of perception do they have of chemistry? Do they get scared and they think chemistry is difficult? Do they know chemistry well? Do they what's their perception of it when you meet them?
Yeah, I think by the time I typically see the students, which is usually by sophomore, junior year, they've had a lot of chemistry, and I don't think they're as intimidated by it.
Okay.
But they tend to be more intimidated by the biology parts.
Okay.
Right.
But that's just my experience.
Do you think some of the younger students first taking chemistry might be intimidated by it?
Yeah, although, it's a great question. I guess I don't really know. I've not heard it, because I think our major is so small that there's so much selection that happens on both sides before the students actually enroll in our program, that if they were afraid of chemistry, they probably have chosen another major.
Right.
But yeah, but yeah, I guess it might be true of the first year students taking chemistry. I just don't know because I don't typically know the freshmen that well.
Right.
But it's certainly possible.
Right.
So in your 80-hour work week and lab, have you ever had time to just, do something for fun? Just like, oh, I remember that reaction from when I was young, and just do something for the enjoyment of it? Or is it all work?
Yeah, it's usually not technical. I mean, I like to get outside and just kind of, I like to be active as much as I can. I wish it were more these days, but going for a walk and being in nature, I really like, or being on the beach, as cliche as that sounds. But yeah, most everything I do that apart from work is really not technical. I like to watch horrible movies, if there's ever a chance. Do puzzles and like I think that's important because for me, I need some sort of, other part of the brain activities to balance out. I love music and listening to music and that sort of thing. So for me, that's the nourishing, balancing part. Yeah.
Do you think your kids are going to get the same exposure to science that you got when you were young? I mean, do you think, when I was young, there was a lot of chemistry and biology and science kids, and I felt like everyone was doing science, and now there's a lot of video games and social media and TV. So I don't know if you've noticed that shift from when you were young, or not.
Yeah, I don't know if I know enough about kids today because my kids are still so young.
Very young.
But I will say that in my own person, so I have an almost 4-year-old and 1-year-old twins.
Oh,
Oh, wow. Okay.
They turn 1-year-old tomorrow, actually. So I couldn't quite tell you what they think of life, but at least not in a way that, well, I don't know. But at least in my personal situation, like my kids will not escape from science because both their parents are engineers.
Right.
But as far as kids today, I do think that there's a lot of kids who are interested in more technical topics, and they don't necessarily see it as that, right? So like there's a lot of kids who are very good at programming, right? That's something that I never, I'm still not good at programming.
Oh, me neither.
But my 4-year-old can use an iPad and figure out exactly to do it. It's not necessarily programming, but I have nieces and nephews who can program, and they're 10, and that's amazing to see. So I think there's this huge embracing of that, and there's a democratization of a lot of different things that there's a lot of info on the web. There's a lot of interactive activities and things for kids that get them kind of immersed in science without really knowing that's what they're doing. And I think as long as kids are curious, there's always going to be a gateway to science and STEM. But yeah, I don't know. I think if anything, like kids today are more exposed than they were, at least when I was young. My parents weren't technical people.
Right.
They'd both been to college, but they didn't have technical type STEM careers. And then ironically, my brother and I both were chemical engineers. I don't know where that came from. But I think more from school and interest. But yeah, I don't know if that's a good answer to your question, but I do think things are changing for sure. And the way that kids learn is just really different, right? And we all hope that we'll be more inclusive in STEM, right? Because we want to make sure that everybody's brought along for the ride, and it's not just the kids of scientists, right? You want anybody from all walks of life to develop this, be bitten by this science bug. And I'm hopeful that that's happening. I think we all need to continue to work to make that happen, though, like the good work you guys are doing.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, my daughter's 6, and I've had her put some sodium bicarbonate in the oven and synthesize some sodium carbonate, and then she's mixed it with magnesium sulfate Epsom salts to make some magnesium carbonate precipitate, and she learned all about solubility and compounds and chemicals and toxicities. So young kids can really learn a lot. I wouldn't underestimate how much of those concepts they can take in and they can do themselves. All of this being very benign substances. We're
in chemistry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say chemistry is just magic unmasked, right? It's like it's magic behind the scenes.
It is.
That's all it is. So yeah, I think it's incredibly inspiring for kiddos, right?
Right.
Yeah, we're actually trying to, a small part of what we do is put together activities and experiments at all different levels. So for young kids, for high school kids, for college kids, but even for adults like yourself to rediscover why you thought science was fun. Like, I know you talk about unwinding at the beach and outdoor activities. But there's a lot of science experiments that we've done, and we've shown people, working adults with careers, and they're like, wow, that looks really fun. I want to do that at home. And just make people realize that chemistry is more than a subject that was really difficult for them, or something they see in Breaking Bad, or something they see in Chemical Weapons.
Mhm.
And really work on just changing people's perception of it.
Yeah, it's important.
So yeah, just a little bit about what we do. We're a ChemTalk's a brand new nonprofit, and we're trying to make chemistry more fun to learn, more accessible to people around the world in the safest manner possible, and just to be perceived in a better, more positive way through like I said, a lot of different initiatives. So what do you think about that? Do you think that's something that's needed, or that is being done enough, or could be done more?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always need this, right? Having that, targeted outreach to people to make them aware of chemistry and STEM and engineering is important. Especially how you said before, what real people do and how basic science translates into improving lives. I think it's super important, so that the public gets examples of that, so that kids get examples of that, and all the way through, right, from kid to adult. So I think it's very important work for sure.
That's great. We're Rylie, you've been sending our perception of chemistry survey to a lot of your classmates and students. A lot of people I know at Texas AMU have taken it. Have any of them give you any anecdotal feedback on how they view chemistry, or what their impression is or was?
Yes, so there's one question on the survey about what you think the hardest subject or the hardest topic in chemistry is. And for a lot of them, they were just like everything. Like they like pinpoint like a single thing. So I feel like that's the number one thing that they told me about, was just like, I don't even know where to start. But they said that after, because then it says like, what would you like to check out and stuff. They also were like, wow, that's a lot of resources. And they actually checked out the website, and they said it looked really cool, and they liked the tutorial. Yeah, so.
Well, guys, I'm gonna have to go here soon because I've got another commitment, but is there anything else that we should cover before signing off?
I just I guess two last questions that I had, a couple last questions, and we'll wrap up. Who's someone in the field of chemistry or chemical engineering that you look up to, and why?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I mean, I will say that there's kind of the people that are always cited that get a lot of credit and certainly deserve it.
Right.
But I am gonna throw a bit of a curveball and say that the people that I've really looked up to and who my career has like totally been enabled by are all of these kind of unnamed folks in the microbiology space, especially like who may not even be chemists, but who published papers in the 70s and 80s. People like Colin Orpin, people like Mike Theodorou, who's actually a huge mentor of mine, who pioneered anaerobic microbiology, and they have not been given their due. you know, they've not won Nobel Prizes, they probably never will, but they did develop a lot of techniques that are critical to what we do and critical to what a lot of people work on in microbiology today.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's where my mind goes when I think about people that I look up to. I mean, of course, there's like the Francis Arnolds of the world and Jennifer Doudna and all these amazing scientists, but the people who have really enabled what we do are unsung heroes.
Yep. Yep. What's your favorite element and why?
Oh my goodness, it's got to be carbon. I know that probably sounds lame, but carbon's everywhere.
There's no lame.
Carbon's in all life. And it's not. It's kind of it's so vital, and it makes us up, right? And it can do a lot of really cool things. So yeah, carbon.
Is there anything else you want to tell our viewers who may be interested in chemistry or considering a chemistry career or just wanting to learn more about chemistry?
Yeah, I'd say that there's a lot of different ways to get involved, right? And also I find, especially with a lot of younger students, they think that they need to have straight A's in all the sciences and math, and that if they get a B or if they get a C or something like that, that even if they're interested in it, that they're not cut out for it. And I would tell those people to stick with it, right? Because nobody's perfect and we all learn differently, and do what you're passionate about. Don't let people stop you. Don't let other people's assessment of you dictate who you become. I think everybody that I know and work with, myself included, we've all had setbacks and have felt like we weren't like we weren't good enough. And so to try and silence that voice to do what you think is you're passionate about is really, really important.
Got it. Well, Michelle, thanks. It was a real pleasure talking to you. This was really informative. And I know I've learned a lot. And yeah, it was really nice to have this talk. Thank you for the time.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the work that you guys do, and I'm happy to stay in touch if I can help with anything in the future.
Yeah, that would
means a lot. Thank you.
Great. Yep, we'll connect you with you, and yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Take care.
Bye.